That was Celine Dion singing God Bless America. It is a Tuesday morning, the 3rd day of May, 2022. Mark Size here on KLYN 95.7 FM. And now we will be probably just for about the next 50 minutes, not 15, but 50 minutes on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. And you can catch us on Facebook at LV Cornerstone and YouTube, LV Cornerstone Church. And we're just going. And the reason I say that we're cutting off early is because I might have to put on an apron at 7 o'clock and go help. It's starting to look that way. One thing I want you to know is that prayer line is open. Faithful, faithful, faithful. Got some faithful people here that you just got to love. Prayer line 505-425-3717. Faithful. We know how important prayer is, and it has always been important. And we have people who have prioritized prayer for themselves, for you, for your community, and we offer it as a service to you. And we say, if you need prayer, you want to get something off your chest a little bit, you want that little extra help, because you know what? 1 cent 1,000 and 2 cents 10,000. So Jesus told us that when we get together, Jesus is all about his people getting together. It's not the lone wolf, what would you call it, mentality for the kingdom of God. But you get connected with our prayer warriors. To this morning's number, once again, 505-425-3717. And let's cast our burdens down before the throne of God above. Let's go to the throne of grace, and we'll help you do that. Jennifer with us this morning already. Good morning. Good morning. Jennifer is on our YouTube channel. Jennifer always sending me some interesting stuff, a little here and a little there, little clips that I can watch. Anyway, we are in the 16th chapter of 2 Kings, and I apologize partially, let me say, yesterday for what we had going on, because yesterday was a ton of activity here in Las Vegas. Yesterday there was fire trucks, police, all day long. I stayed at the coffee shop till about 1 o'clock. And I couldn't believe the 8 or 10 state policers at one time, these fire trucks going back and forth, people loading up, and I don't know, a lot of them going to Glorieta or going to places to where they have already set up, maybe with family members or something, to where they could get out of town, because they didn't know whether Las Vegas was going to burn yesterday or not. Today seems to be a whole different story. But good morning, Andrea. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Andrea. Tommy, how you guys doing? Anyway, let's get into why we are here. We are here in studio at 2207 7th Street. And we are in the 16th chapter of 2 Kings. Another theme, I'm going to be probably talking about the fire a little bit more than we should in our program. But I have gotten calls from Espanola, gotten calls from Santa Fe, gotten calls from all over Albuquerque and the areas, people saying, what can we do? How can we help? And I thank you very much for those. I really do. Oh, Joe and Flo with us from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Thank you for your calls yesterday, Joe. Appreciate it very much. Andrea, thank you for your offer yesterday. I won't tell everybody, but it brought a tear to my eye. Don't tell it, okay? Just between you and I. Somebody's trying to call me at this early in the morning. Why would you try to call me? 2 Kings chapter 16, verse 1. We are going through. Let me. I think some of our people want to know this that are on the line already, because I have found the button to where I can see your comments much earlier than usual. Okay, before it was look at this and look at that. Now I found out that I can look at your comments. Yesterday, very early, overnight yesterday, the fire was coming from the west, and the wind was blowing it toward Las Vegas. So almost the whole western flank of Las Vegas was, the outskirts. Okay, don't get me wrong. Outside, the hills on the other side, on the west side of Las Vegas, were burning, and it seemed like that fire was almost stretching, almost from I-25 up toward Gallinas Canyon, and the wind was blowing it toward us. So yesterday there was just a lot of activity and everything like that, and even in the afternoon, by the time we were looking at it, Eileen and I were looking at it later in the day, late afternoon. You look out toward there, the you could tell it was on fire. Those hills back over there were on fire, but it never really crossed over completely, and so this morning is very calm. The skies are well, let's see where the direction of the wind is. That might have something to do with it, and while I do that, I will not confuse you too much on the screen for those who are on there. Winds are out of the south right now, so it's actually, blowing it a different way instead of here to the east. So yesterday was one of those days to where I was getting texts and calls in the middle of the program. I didn't know if I was going to have to send my wife out of town or not. But she went to work. Eileen worked yesterday all day long. All day long. Stores, almost all the grocery stores were closed. Almost all the restaurants were closed. Almost all the businesses were closed here in Las Vegas. I stayed at the coffee shop till a little past noon, and I'm not very good at the coffee shop, so I did Las Vegas a service and I closed the doors. Didn't have any help to make I know how to make a cappuccino. I know how to make a latte. I know how to make a Americano. I know how to make a doppio. But give me all those other fancy drinks. I think it's just a block in my mind. Chapter 16, 2 Kings. And yesterday we went through the 15th chapter. Started off in the 15th chapter looking at a king that was in Judah, and then after that, in succession, different kings that were in Samaria. Some of them only lasting months, some of them only lasting a week or so. And you see the treachery. Now, we read these things, and what I try to do many times is I try to put myself into the shoes of somebody who is just starting to look at the Bible. Let's say that we're just, coming to faith or even investigating the faith, and we find ourselves listening to a program like this where we're going through these people killing off one. These are God's people. These are God's people. What does it reveal to us? It reveals the depravity of man is what it deals. And you have to be able to pick out the mercy of God in the midst of all of that. The love, the mercy, and the justice of God. You have to be able to pick that out, because the carnal mind will only look, the natural mind will only look at the death and the destruction, the assassination, the grasping for position. And ladies and gentlemen, we have to understand that our hearts need, oh my God, the heart of man is sinful. We have seen that since the beginning. I had an interesting YouTube. I got to put it on our Facebook page or something like that. I had a very interesting YouTube video that I watched yesterday, kind of giving us a bigger understanding scope of the Old Testament. I thought it was beautiful. Let me listen to it a couple of more times before I put it on there, and then I'll do it, because I was doing some other things and listening to it at the same time. But we have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that if we don't get a heart transplant in our life, The heart of man is wicked. We've seen it, like I tell you, since the beginning. So you read these things, you see these things, the treachery that, oh my God. And you say, but these are God's people. These are those that God, and He's going to cover it. We're going to get into that this week. We're going to get into some of these things this week, and we're going to look at them and we're going to say, yep. Somebody's going to defend what God has done. And the reason why He's had to bring His justice upon starting off with Samaria. We are almost there. So we see the darkness of the heart of man, not just the natural man, but also the carnal man. In the midst of that, there is always that little vein, that little thread of a spiritual man that is out over there. And don't miss that either. But don't discount the love, the compassion, the mercy, and the grace of God. And we can look at this from the heart of a parent. Even though you say, I'm not a parent, but you had parents. We could look at this as a heart of a parent, and we could look down and say, our children wouldn't always line up, and when I was a child, I definitely didn't. How did my parents treat me? In the 17th year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, Ahaz, the son of Jotham, king of Judah, began to reign. So we're looking at the southern kingdom, and we're looking at Ahaz in the south. He was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. He did not do what was right in the sight of Yahweh his God, as his father David had done. So we have had some, I don't know if we should even rate them on a scale, but we've had some okay kings in the south. We've had some bad kings in the south, and we've had some pretty decent kings. Ahaz is one of those that's leaning toward the lower part of the scale. Because some of these kings that we've looked at have tried to bring reform, revival, whatever you call it, reformation. Some people get hung up on the word that you might use. Oh, revival, when it's reformation. Yeah, okay. Whatever it is. But change, spiritual, the spiritual climate, the spiritual temperature. And many times they have not been able to fulfill the job. The high places is how it talks about it many times. But this Ahaz was 20 years old. He did not do what was right in the sight of Yahweh, his God, as his father David. So David seems to be the standard. You say, well, wait. David was couldn't build a temple because he was a man of war. David had romantic trysts in his life. David had, but David repented all the time. David understood that his heart needed that transplant, and the only way, let's talk about a transplant and then talk about a transfusion. And when David sinned, you read Psalm 51, he went to the right place for the transfusion. But Ahaz, he walked in the way of the kings of Israel. So he is in Judah, but he's starting to mirror things that are going on in Samaria. Indeed, he made his son pass through the fire. This was idolatry at probably way up there on the scale. I mean, it's very easy to say this is idolatry at its worst. This is not the purpose that God has for us. But they were learning from all these others, and God had warned them about all the other nations when they were going to come into the land. Did they listen? At the end of the day, you can say no. Do we listen? At the end of the day, is it a yes or is it a no? I mean, let's just take one day at a time. Let's just, kind of take stock of yesterday in the afternoon and say, well, how was I? Did I get started off, praise the Lord, and then in the afternoon, he walked in the way of the kings of Israel. Indeed, he made his son pass through the fire. You say, what do you mean these guys? They've made their son pass through the fire? There was sacrifices to false gods. That's the way that's what Satan wants. You say, how cruel is that? Well, it's about as cruel as abortion. Oh, now that's a topic we're going to be hearing a lot about. You got to follow what somebody leaked a document from the Supreme Court. And I think they did it to stir up a lot of trouble, but we'll find out what happens because we've been waiting for a decision from the Supreme Court that we're expecting in June, and now anyway, he walked in the way of the kings of Israel. He made his son pass through the fire according to the abominations of the nations whom Yahweh had cast out from before the children of Israel. So if you've been with us and you've been following this stuff that we've been talking about let's just talk about the time of Moses and Joshua and the plan that God had for their lives. Hello? Anybody out there this morning? The abominations of the nations. He says, don't get caught up in their stuff. Please don't get caught up in their stuff. And as we say in Spanish, dicho y hecho, no sooner said than done. Vegas is 38 degrees. We're looking for a high today of 76, windy with a south wind, 10 to 28, gusts up to 39 miles per hour. So if you look at the maps that are all over the Forest Service page and Facebook and everything like that, south wind going up toward the north, you can see if that's a good thing or bad thing for your piece of property. Wednesday, mostly sunny, high around 67. Southwest wind 11 to 25, gusts up to 36. And then Thursday, mostly sunny, high around 75. Northwest wind 10 to 19, gusts up to 28 miles per hour. So just as concerning the wind speeds are the direction of the wind. I think we've been paying attention to that more than we've ever worried about that. Prayer line open for you till 8 o'clock at 505-425-3717. Also, I need to mention is that National Day of Prayer this Thursday here at Cornerstone Church. We're going to try to, let's see what the temperature is going to be like, around 75. We meet 12 o'clock noon here at Cornerstone Church, and for the last couple of years it has been outside, and I'm hoping that we'll do that again. I don't see why not, but that's the plan, and we're praying about National Day of Prayer. This Thursday, 12 o'clock noon, right here. Many pastors, leaders from our spiritual community will be here. But he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, Ahaz. He sacrificed and burned incense on the high places, on the hills, and every green tree. And you know what? We've seen kings in both the north and the south who have tried to bring reform. Oh, no, revival. Oh, no, reformation. Oh, no, pick your word, okay? Pick a card, any card. He sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. And many times the high places were always there and always a burr in the saddle of God's covenant people. But this guy, he brings it into town. He doesn't just say, "Hey, we're going to do this on the sneaks." We're going to do it all over the place. Then Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came to Jerusalem to make war. So Ahaz is the king in the south, and Israel, Pekah is the king, and Rezin, the king of Syria, have conspired together and confederated together against Ahaz. And they besieged Ahaz, but could not overcome him. Well, there's a feather in Ahaz's cap. At that time, Rezin, king of Syria, captured Elath for Syria and drove the men of Judah from Elath. Then the Edomites went to Elath to dwell there to this day. And what we're going to see, and even don't miss this, what we're seeing is that God is pruning back Israel. They've had times of expansion. We saw especially to the time of Solomon, where there was tremendous amount of expansion of the land that God had laid up for these people when he brought them in through with Joshua. But little by little, the paring is going down. And what is it? Why? What is the determining factor of the pruning that's going on in their life? Well, Rezin captures a city. He drove the men of Judah from there. And the Edomites, remember Edom? Remember Esau? Okay, the descendants of Esau are the Edomites. They took over the land. What did they have to do with Syria? They didn't have a lot to do with Syria. They were, far apart, distant-wise from Syria to Edom was far apart. I don't know how many miles it was, but you look at the south, what would it be? The southwest corner, the southeast corner of Israel is where Edom was, and Syria was to the north. But the Syrians come in, kick all the Judites out of the land, out of the city, this area, and then the Edomites come and take it over. So Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria. Now don't get Syria and Assyria mixed up. At times they were one. At times they weren't. So Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, said, I am your servant and your son. I'm your boy. Come up and save me from the hand of the king of Syria and from the hand of the king of Israel who rise up against me. And Ahaz took the silver and gold that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasuries of the king's house and sent it as a present to the king of Assyria. How about a little bribe? Wait a minute, Ahaz. What's the matter with all the gods that you have been allowing to be worshipped in Judah? Where are they? I mean, we know that this was God's promised land, and that God was asking them to be faithful, to love him with all their heart, with all their soul, not pushing them to it, but offering his arms out to them. They've allowed idolatry to come in and all these foreign gods. Where's your foreign gods? How come they're not helping you in battle? These people understood the spiritual battle much better than we do today. But what he does is he bribes the Assyrians to come and help him. He took the silver, the gold that was found in the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house and sent it as a present to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria heeded him. For the king of Assyria went up against Damascus and took it, carried its people captive to Kir, and killed Rezin. So this is the way the Assyrians take care of business. They've got their bribe. Ahaz has sold out to the Assyrians, and the Assyrians just go down a little bit further south of where they're at to Syria, and they slap them around a little bit and kill their king. And Ahaz probably sitting back puffing on a cigar saying, oh yeah, baby, oh yeah, I made the right choice. I picked the right team. Now, Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria. Hey, your son is coming to meet his daddy. That's what he said. I'm your son. I'm your servant. I'm your son. Here's the money. So that we can draw up the papers, I guess, so we can, the adoption papers. I'll pay for the adoption. Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and saw an altar that was at Damascus. And King Ahaz sent to Urijah the priest the design of the altar and its pattern according to all its workmanship. This is an interesting situation. Ahaz goes up and to meet the king of Assyria, and while he's there walking around Damascus, he sees an altar. And he says, my God, that's a pretty little altar. Was it an altar to Yahweh? Of course it wasn't. So yeah, I can see him taking out a piece of paper and a pencil, getting his phone out and getting a little picture of it and texting it off to Urijah, saying, hey, I like this. I like this altar. What do you think about this altar? Urijah, verse 11, built an altar according to all that King Ahaz had sent from Damascus. Could you see King Ahaz getting out his tape measure and say, well, was this is what it looked like. Here's the drawing, and this is where the columns were, and this. So Urijah the priest, verse 11, made it before King Ahaz came back from Damascus. He's out there, hobnobbing with his new daddy, Tiglath-Pileser, and by the time he gets down, Urijah has, okay, Urijah, I thought you were a priest, son. I thought you were the high priest of Yahweh. We talk a little bit occasionally about the slippery slope, ladies and gentlemen. When the king came back from Damascus, the king saw the altar, and the king approached the altar and made offerings on it. So no sooner does he get back, the altar has been constructed by Urijah already the priest, and let's get the offerings. So he burnt his burnt offerings and his grain offerings, and he poured his drink offerings and sprinkled the blood of his peace offerings on the altar. Okay, here's something for you to consider, and you take this deeper in your own. It was the offering of Yahweh. It was the offering. It's like, how can I better not use that example. They're offering the burnt offerings, the grain offerings. All of these were prescribed by God, but it was on the idol altar that they were doing it on. He burned his burnt offerings, his grain offerings, he poured his drink offerings, and sprinkled the blood of peace offerings of the altar. There's a mixture, a very, very dangerous mixture that is going on now in Judah. Somebody has one chemical and somebody has another chemical, and you mix it together, they just do not mix together. Watch out with the holy things of God. And watch out how we try to combine the holy with the unholy, the sacred with the sacrilegious. I mean, there's something we can even do individually. This isn't just you say, well, yeah, I know that church across town and that denomination over there and that, cool it. It always has to start with the man in the mirror first. He also brought the bronze altar, which was before the Lord, from the front to the temple, from between the new altar and the house of the Lord, and put it on the north side of the new altar. What does he do? The bronze altar was where God had prescribed the sacrifices to be burnt on, to be offered up on the bronze altar. Now we have, pick your altar. This is the A or B, left or right. Which one do you want? Do you want the Damascus altar? And I kind of like that one better, Ahaz says, and that's really the prettier one. The other one, it's not as fancy. It's not as, it's kind of old and outdated. Is it old? Is it outdated? He brought the bronze altar, which was before the Lord Yahweh, from the front of the temple, from between the new altar and the house of the Lord, and put it on the north side of the new altar. So I started to slide the bronze altar out of the way. King Ahaz commanded Urijah the priest, saying, on the great new altar burn the morning burnt offering and the evening grain offerings, and the king burnt sacrifice and his grain offerings with the burnt offerings of all the people of the land, their grain offerings, their drink offerings, sprinkle of the blood of the burnt offering, of the blood of the sacrifice, and the bronze altar shall be for me to inquire by. So let's use this new Purdy, the latest and the greatest that we learned of the Syria. Oh, the Assyrians, they really got it, man. That Tiglath-Pileser, he's my homeboy, and he's showing me all these new tricks that are out over there. And just, the bronze altar, that's for me to go to, okay? The rest of you guys, let's do it. Thus Urijah the priest did according to all that King Ahaz commanded. Well, he told me to do it. Well, that's not what the scriptures commanded you to do it. That's not what the covenant that God had put in front of you, Urijah the priest. And there was a responsibility that the priest had. King Ahaz cut off the panels of the carts and removed the lavers from them. He took down the sea from the bronze oxen that were under it and put on a pavement of stones, These were things that were constructed in the time of Solomon. You remember the amount of material and workmanship that had gone in. We had been looking at pictures of the bronze laver, and how they had these oxen that they had cast that were holding it up, and it was called the sea, and there was water that was in it, and that's where the washing was done. And no, he's cutting it up into pieces. He cuts off the panels of the carts. Oh, Ahaz, really? He took down the sea from the bronze oxen that were under it and put it on a pavement of stones. He also removed the Sabbath pavilion which they had built in the temple. He removed the king's outer entrance from, hey, what's the matter with a little bit of remodeling? You know, we got to get this stuff is old, it's outdated. Is it? Let me tell you what. Our God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The word of the Lord does not get old. And that's kind of one of the issues that's one of the issues that we have to deal with all the time, ladies and gentlemen, is that, man, we can't, that was for then. See, this is the way that we approach things today. Kind of the same way Ahaz. He said, we got to dress this place up a little bit. That altar's getting old. I found a newer one. That bronze sea that's out there full of water and reflecting our sin, because that's what it was. It was looking down into it and reflecting the heart of man. And we talked about the treacherous heart of man as we started off our program today, and realizing that God even has a remedy for it. Oh, but we didn't like the remedy. We wanted to go someplace else. Those things that, Paul wrote that for those times. It was really a cultural thing. Really? It was? It's either the inspired word of God or it's not. He removed the Sabbath pavilion which they had built in the temple. He removed the king's outer entrance from the house of the Lord on account of the king of Assyria. On account of the king of Assyria. So, Tiglath-Pileser is his daddy. Yahweh is not his daddy. And the priest, what is it, or Urijah or something like that? Yeah, Urijah the priest is right along with him. Oh, yeah, we're just fixing it up a little. We're making it more. No. Sorry. Now, the rest of the acts of Ahaz, which he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the king of Judah? So Ahaz rested with his fathers, was buried with his fathers in the city of David. Then Hezekiah his son reigned in his place. Let's look on to, we got enough time that we can look, well, verse 17 is going to take us back up to the north again. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, Hoshea, the son of Elah, became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 9 years. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel who were before him. Okay? Well, where are we going to put what we know about Hoshea? Right? Where are we going to put him on Pastor Mark's scale? We don't have a scale. Yeah, I guess we probably all have a little scale in our own back of our mind someplace, and let's just say that we do. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel who were before him. So a notch. Let's give him a notch and a half. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against him. So notice that Tiglath-Pileser is not king of Assyria anymore. Shalmaneser is. He came up against him, and Hoshea became his vassal and paid him tribute money. Interesting. Became his vassal. Let's see what Webster says. A tenant. One who holds land of a superior. What's that happening? Yeah, Hoshea says, you know what, Shalmaneser? You're my boss. I'm holding this land really, belongs to you now. Who vows fidelity and homage to him. That's a vassal. He paid him tribute money. Oh, taxes? So now the taxes are going to the Assyrians. And the king of Assyria uncovered a conspiracy by Hoshea. Oh, Hoshea's got another, he's trying to work both sides to the middle, and he gets caught. For he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt. Well, so what? Well, we'll find out so much. And he brought no tribute to the king of Assyria as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Now the king of Assyria went throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it for 3 years. So what's happening here? Oh, I think we all know what's happening here. Hoshea thought he was a little bit smarter than Shalmaneser, and he tries to play both sides to the middle. He tries to say, well, yes, Shalmaneser. Tiglath isn't around anymore. Hey, yeah, Shalmaneser, yeah. Well, I just don't have the checks in the mail. I've overdrawn my account a little bit. I'll be there. It'll come. No, he's conspiring with Egypt, and it doesn't work out for him. King of Assyria finds out, and he shuts him up. Not the way we think he does. Shut him up means he shuts him up in prison, and bound him in prison. Now the king of Assyria went throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it for 3 years. So he says, okay, that's the way you guys want to play. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to come over there, and I'm going to plow the land. I'm going to take out my plows and my discs, and I'm just going to tear up your land. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away to Assyria and placed them in Halah by the Habor, the river of Goshen, in the cities of the Medes. Now, this, this, in your estimation, we said, well, that was quick. Well, let me tell you what. This was what had been warned by God and his prophets to Israel way back hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So let's cover a little bit of a topic here that we brought up at the beginning. The treachery of the heart of man, the sinfulness of the heart of man, but the mercy of God, and God has been merciful with them. They've come into the land with Joshua. had been prepared by Moses in the wilderness. God had been very specific about how they would treat him and treat one another, and what the blessings were going to be and the curse was going to be if they didn't. What happens now? Oh, God brought them. God tore them up. God, no, God, they did it to themselves, ladies and gentlemen. We look around at things that are going on in our world, and who's the fall guy? See, Israel, according to the title of the topic that's over the paragraph, says the fall of Israel. Well, God didn't. They did it to themselves, ladies and gentlemen. Well, how about this and how about that? Understand that God is merciful, God is love, but God is just at the same time. He's not a man that he should lie. For probably, I don't even know how many years. Let's just do something here real quick, and then maybe somebody will do the math for me. Let's say that this is 725 BC. Okay. Let's go to Joshua, them coming into the land, and let's see what it says. 1451. So all the way from 1451 to, where were we? Put it here, and then we're going to put it here and go where we were. 725. Hundreds of years God had been dealing with these people. If my math is right, about 750 years, at least. 750 years. You say, well, that's not even, 1,000. Yeah, well, wait. United States hasn't even been around. You can, twice the amount of years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria, carried Israel away to Assyria, and placed them. So he takes, and there was going to be different waves that were going to go to Assyria, and they were going to be scattered to different places around this Assyrian empire. But the first wave of them, they end up in a city, place them in Hala, and by the Habor, the river of Goshen, in the cities of the Medes. Now, you say, well, that's, that God allowed that to happen, and we can go over that over and over again. But verse 7 kind of gives us, or starts giving us an explanation of the whys and the hows. And on a Tuesday morning, the 3rd day of May, 2022, 40 degrees. At this time, we have a 4-mile-an-hour breeze, making it feel like 36 out there. Let's see what the weather conditions at a little higher elevation there at the airport. They're showing winds at 14 miles an hour instead of our 6 that we're looking at here out of the south. And we are looking at the 17th chapter of 2 Kings. Also let you know is that prayer line is available for you for another hour at 505-425-3717. Let's get back into our scriptures here, and I'll take that panel off right along with it. 4. Okay. So it was. Andrea, what's 7:26? Is that the time you want me to stop? I'm not sure. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against Yahweh their God. Okay? They had their God. The other nations that were there, these were people that God had told them to displace from the beginning. Okay? The Ashtoreths, the Baals, the Molechs, all the other, give them a name, it's all Satan to begin with. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and they had feared other gods, and had walked in the statutes of the nations whom Yahweh had cast out from before the children of Israel, and the kings of Israel which they had made. All right. This is the defense. I would imagine I would categorize this as a defense that the writer of 2 Kings is making concerning the judgment that has fallen upon the northern kingdom, and over the last, 750 years at least, that God has been dealing with these people. I don't know what your thought of a generation is. Some people say it's 40, some people say 70. There's different types, but let's just say the generation's 70 years. It shouldn't be that much because, anyway, but the large number for generations, say people, that's 10 generations, 12 generations of people. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against Yahweh their God, who had brought them. God brought them out of the land of Egypt. God brought them from under the hand of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. But, it doesn't say but. Verse 7 says, and they feared other gods, and had walked in the statutes of the nations whom the Lord Yahweh had cast out from before the children of Israel, and the kings of Israel which they had made. Also, the children of Israel secretly did against the Lord their God things that were not right. They built for themselves high places in all their cities, from watchtower to fortified cities. They set up for themselves sacred pillars and wooden images on every high hill and under every green tree. There they burnt incense on all the high places, yada, da. So what are we saying? Well, what are the scriptures saying here? Okay. My interpretation of this is that God has done everything for these people, from bringing them out of Egypt, baptizing them in the Red Sea, bringing them into the wilderness and preparing them to come into the promised land. The whole worship experience has been defined there for these people. The expectations that God had upon their life, and then telling them, hey, here's what's going to happen if. And now it happens. What did God do wrong? Hello. What did God do wrong? Let me tell you what we're talking about here. 1451, 725. Oh, 7. There you go. Now my girl came through for me. 726 years it had been, from the time of Joshua chapter 1, verse 1, until 2 Kings chapter 17. She did the math for me. I didn't catch it the first time. Anyway, what are we seeing here? I got one word for us. Apostasy. A fading away from the covenant that God had made with these special people, the sons of Abraham. See, it goes even before the Joshua-Moses thing. It goes all the way back to Abraham and the patriarchs. It goes even further back to Noah, and even further back to Adam in the garden. God had cut covenant with his people. And what we see is this cycle of apostasy. That ugliness of people that drift away from the spiritual foundation that God has laid for a generation, for many generations, not just for one generation. Yes, you're right. We see that happening all the time. We're seeing that happening today. As a pastor, it's very frustrating to see it. But there is grace in the middle of apostasy. For so it was, the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt from the hand of Pharaoh. They had feared other gods, walked in the statutes of the nations, whom the Lord had cast out before the children. So they want to play both sides, really, is what it is. The children of Israel. And you can't do that, ladies and gentlemen. You can't do that. Sooner or later, something's going to happen. Sooner or later, you're going to slip and fall. The children of Israel secretly did against the Lord their God things that were not right. That's the way they started. We'll just do it secretly. Nobody sees, nobody knows. They built for themselves high places, their cities, from the watchtower to the fortified cities. They set up for themselves sacred pillars and wooden images on every high hill and every green tree. You see that? You see a good, well, those people, they sure were bad. Yeah, you're right. They were bad. They really got themselves into trouble. You're right. They did. There they burned incense on all the high places, like the nations whom Yahweh had carried away from before them. They did wicked things to provoke the Lord to anger, for they served idols which the Lord had said to them, "You shall not do this thing." Yet the Lord testified against Israel and against Judah by all of his prophets, every seer, saying, "Turn from your evil ways." It sounds like a Santana song. And keep my commandments and my statutes according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, and which I sent to you by my servant the prophets. Okay, just put that in perspective. Huh? What did God do wrong? Well, let me tell you what. God does not change. He's still going to, if you stay with me for the big picture, if you just kind of get this little snippet here and you take it and you say, well, that's the way he is. And that's the way all these religious people are. And that's why I don't. Well, let me tell you something. If you stay for the big picture, you're going to see that the love of God does not change, that the mercy, the compassion, the grace, and the justice of God is still going to be extended toward these people. And they're going to get it. That's the beautiful thing about it, is that somewhere down the line, they're going to do the same thing that they did in Egypt. The northern kingdom has been taken and is going to be, continually people are going to be displaced into the Assyrian Empire. And sooner or later, and this is what gives us hope, ladies and gentlemen, sooner or later, they're going to start crying out to God the same way that their forefathers cried out to God in Egypt. They served idols, verse 12, of which Yahweh had said to them, "You shall not do this thing." Well, I don't know. He just doesn't want us to have fun. Look at all the fun that all the other people are having, serving their gods, and they can do whatever they want to do, and they can go wherever they want to go. They can see whatever they want to say. They can say whatever they want to say, and it's, wait a minute. The reason why. It's just like that example that we give when you see the child playing with fire. He keeps holding his hand over the flame, and you can say, listen, you're gonna get burnt. It's gonna, and then you gotta take them to the emergency room. But God is going to heal these people. God has a bigger plan for them. So look at the condition of the heart of man. But God is going to be faithful. The Lord testified against Israel and against Judah by all of his prophets, every seer, saying, "Turn from your evil ways." No, Santana wasn't singing a Christian song. It wasn't a prophetic message. Don't even. I just use that to kind of get the attention of my generation. Turn away from your evil ways. Keep my commandments and my statutes according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, which I sent you by my servant the prophets. Nevertheless, they would not hear, but stiffened their necks like the necks of their fathers, who did not believe in the Lord their God. They did not really believe in Yahweh. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, they made an altar call. Oh, yeah, they repeated after me. Oh, yeah, they got a little bit of the warm fuzzies. Wow, that was, man. They rejected his statutes and his covenant they made with their fathers. His testimonies we had testified against them. They followed idols, became idolaters, went after the nations who were all around them, concerning whom the Lord had charged them that they should not do like them. So they left all the commandments of the Lord their God, made for themselves a molded image and 2 calves, made wooden image and worshipped all the host of heaven and served Baal. So really this is directed at the northern kingdom, against Samaria itself. But don't think that Judah is much better. They're going to have a little bit of a reprieve, but eventually. And they caused their sons and daughters to pass through the fire, practice witchcraft. This is kind of like a lawyer. This is kind of like a lawyer, giving the reasons why. It caused their sons and daughters to pass through the fire. We got some real reasons why. What would a lawyer do? A lawyer would bring charges against, take out the law. They caused their sons and daughters to pass through the fire, practice witchcraft and soothsaying, sold for themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger. Therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel, removed them from his sight, and there was none left but the tribe of Judah alone. So all of the, really it's 10 tribes, because Benjamin had almost melded into Judah as one tribe. Parts of it at least had, and there they are, going to Assyria in chains. But the Lord is going to get their heart again. I need to tell you that. They're going to cry out to the Lord. They're going to find out that Assyria was not the party that they thought it was going to be. That altar that they had seen in Damascus, and that's the latter stages, but all the things that had led up to that, and that's even going on in the southern kingdom. The Lord rejected the descendants of Israel, afflicted them, delivered into the hand of the plunderers, until he had cast them from his sight. For he tore Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. Then Jeroboam drove Israel from following the Lord, and made them commit a great sin. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They did not depart from them, until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants the prophets. So Israel was carried away from their own land to Assyria, as it is to this day. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put a bookmark on that 24th verse, and we're going to come back right around here tomorrow and just continue to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that sin that's going on, and look at the mirror first and say, uh-oh, how about me? Well, how about you? Got to do this and then do that. And we'll play a song. Jason Burton up next singing You Will Be is the name of the song. 15 minutes after the hour of 7
when the songs are sung and the day is done, when the final battle's won, you will be. When the dust is cleared, there are no more tears. When there's nothing left to fear, you will be. You will be. You will be exalted to the highest place. There will be no others to steal your praise. Even after losing counted days, you